Welcome to Beyond the Grave, where darkness and the unknown collide. Join us on a spine-tingling journey through the chilling realms of the supernatural. Prepare to be haunted by eerie tales, ghostly encounters, and the unexplained mysteries that lurk in the shadows. Subscribe now, if you dare, and let's unravel the secrets that lie beyond the grave together. Hope you would enjoy the 1-hour scary story compilation on our channel. Subscribe our channel, and press the bell icon for more disturbing and chilling scary stories. I still remember the day I assembled this bed. It wasn't too long ago after all. The old mattress needed to be thrown away, so I told myself I could as well change the whole thing. A queen size, as if there was anyone else who was going to stay and sleep in it with me. I guess I was hoping for a better future. I wish I could say I also remember the first night I slept in it. But I don't think I do. I believe everything was normal at first. I guess I just crawled under the covers on the right side, took some time to get used to the new bed, and then slept. For sure, I slept better than I had been able to do in the previous weeks, without any wayward spring trying to lodge itself into my back. I really can't say how long it was before I had the first sign that something was wrong. I woke up in the heat of the night without a reason and immediately reached out to press the light button on my alarm clock. 3 a.m. It was while I was rolling on my back again that I felt, rather than notice, the weird depression of the mattress under me, inclined toward the empty side of the bed. I sighed. How could it be that things last so little nowadays? And I touched that area to try and understand what was broken, but there was nothing wrong with the mattress itself. It was as if something was pressing on it on the other side, as if someone was lying there next to me. My blood chilled, as if the covers had been pulled off me at once or had just stopped existing. It was a nightmare. What else could it be? That someone had broken into my house just to lay next to me on my bed seemed quite unlikely. Except I knew I was awake. Not knowing what to do, I slowly turned on my side, clutching the covers as if they had been a lifeline preventing me from drowning. I had everything with me: covers, sheets, and a bedspread. There was no resistance. Nothing held them back. That reassured me at least a bit, enough to prompt me to take action. I grabbed the alarm clock with one hand and pointed toward the left side of the bed, pressing the light button in the process. It didn't show me anything that shouldn't have been there. I took a deep breath, only then realizing that my heart was hammering in my chest. As if to seek confirmation of what I was seeing, I touched the now bare mattress with my free hand, and I immediately regretted doing so. There was no one there. That much was true, but the heat of whoever had been still lingered. I spent the rest of the night roaming my house with an umbrella in my hand, looking for the intruder or at least trying to understand how they had gotten in. I was too angry, too scared even to feel ridicule, or to consider what good that makeshift weapon would have done me if there really was a felon hiding somewhere. But I didn't find anything, neither an intruder nor an explanation. I wasn't sure what had happened or why. The whole thing seemed to make no sense at all, and I tried to seek shelter in the excuse that it had been a nightmare, alternating it with some attempt to rationalize it all somehow. I might have rolled to the other side of the bed, then woken up after moving back to my usual position. That would explain the lingering heat and maybe even the depression in the mattress, which was still getting back into shape. I pretended to believe my explanations and went back to my usual life, even if I must admit the first thing I did the next day was change my lock. A few days and nights passed uneventfully. Actually, a full week went by before once again I found myself awake at 3 a.m. without a reason. The previous episode was not prominent in my mind then. I had done my best to prevent that, so my first reaction, after looking at the clock, was to close my eyes and try to get back to sleep. I was in that limbo between being awake and asleep when I heard it, and even the most common noises held something sinister. Breathing. Shallow panting, as if coming from someone whose lungs weren't working properly. Breathing that wasn't mine. I held my breath. I wanted to be sure it wasn't some weird echo, but that certainty brought no consolation. I still heard the unmistakable sounds of inspiration and expiration. I could imagine a chest inflating and deflating erratically, lifting the covers right next to me. I could imagine it, but I couldn't see it because the bed was empty. This time, not even the mattress betrayed the presence of a possible invader. I stood motionless, frozen, repeating to myself that there must be an explanation, and that the sound I was hearing was just the wind or a figment of my imagination. When the breathing stopped, I didn't even dare reach out to my clock to see how long it had lasted. I just lied there in the clutches of a primal fear until, in spite of everything, sleep won me over. In the following days, I started finding all kinds of excuses to avoid my bed. A nice film on TV late at night, some urgent work to be done. Everything that could allow me to drag my nights on without feeling like a superstitious coward. I couldn't admit to myself that I was afraid of something that couldn't be real. I fell asleep in my chair, on the table, or over the laptop, wherever my resistance to sleep finally gave up. After 1 week, I was irritable, aching all over, and most of all, tired. I was tired enough to decide I had to stop being an idiot and go back to sleep in a bed I had spent almost half my monthly wage on. And for a while, it seemed to have been the right choice. I spent there several quiet nights with no unusual event, or at least none while I was awake to see it. Then, exactly 15 days after the second occurrence, my eyes sprang open in the darkness of my room when it was all too clear that the sun was not in the sky at all. As usual, I touched the alarm clock on the nightstand until I was able to light up its quadrant. The LCD said it was 3 o'clock, and right then it seemed to me the most ominous thing I had ever read, even though nothing I could feel was happening. A cold shiver ran through my body, and the hairs on my arms stood up as if electrified. I rolled on my back so slowly that even I wasn't sure I was actually moving, then kept rolling, turning toward the never empty enough other side of the bed. In spite of the fear that already had me in its clutches, I couldn't help jerking back when the stench hit me as violently as a slap on my face. Even now, I can't really describe it well enough to make someone who hasn't smelled it understand. A mixture of charred flesh and rot is the best I can come up with. It was the only manifestation that night, but it was enough to make me spend the hours still separating me from Dawn cowering on the floor, uncaring of the cold making my limbs shiver. Leaving would mean passing the bed, and the idea alone repulsed me. In the morning, with the sunlight dispelling my fears, I examined the whole room, once again finding nothing. The bed was clean and as fresh as it could be, considering I slept in it every night. No trace of that stench or its origin could be found. I burned everything. Covers, sheets, bed covers, even my pajamas, and the pillows, everything but the mattress. In my folly, I had bought a queen-size one as well, and I couldn't afford another. I didn't know what else I could do or think. As an atheist as I was, I still asked for a priest to come bless my house. A specific room of the house, actually, but I refrained from telling him or giving him explanations. I told him I had moved there recently and didn't know when the house had been blessed the last time. Then again, the priest seemed more interested in my donation than in the reason for my call. For good measure, I also looked for an expert on the paranormal, and it was no easy task finding one that didn't seem to be a character straight out of a B-list novel. The one I finally deemed the most reliable put on a decently convincing pantomime, assured me he had rid the house of some evil presence, asked for a fee that made me regret I hadn't just bought a new mattress and left. In the meantime, I had bought myself a crib. Unfortunately, there was no other room in the house where I could place it but the bedroom, but at least I wasn't going to sleep in the same bed as who? What? I had no clue. I slept badly for days. I can't say whether it was because of the makeshift bed or because of the fear that the thing would manifest again, even if I knew it was not going to happen. Not because I believed in the reassurances of the mage or the power of the prayers. Because it wasn't time yet. I knew it was going to be on a Thursday like every time before, and I'm not sure out of what bravery or recklessness. Maybe just the strength I got from being exasperated. That Thursday I decided I would stay awake to witness the whole event and understand once and for all what was happening to me and why. Instead, I woke up abruptly in the middle of the night, staring at the ceiling. The restless sleep of the previous days must have taken its toll. In spite of my good intentions, I didn't look at the clock. I knew the time. I didn't even look at the bed, not right away. Not for a second, though, did I doubt that my nighttime visitor wasn't back. That would have been impossible, as I could clearly hear its breathing mixed with something else. An undistinguishable rattle, as if it was trying to clear its throat or expel some mucus. A low but rasping, annoying sound. It went on for a while, until I found the courage to turn my gaze. Since I had planned to stay awake, I had left the light on, and I immediately wished I hadn't. It was lying on the bed, on the bare mattress. I know it had once been a man, but what was left of it was nothing human. It looked like a skeleton badly covered by mostly charred flesh and some viscid, unknowable fluids. It had no clothes, and at some points I could see blackened bones peeking from gashes in that fitted flesh. And its eyes, clear, normal eyes, stared at me, fixed on me, even though that poor excuse for a face was turned to the ceiling, as remnants of lips trembled as if to speak, but never produced any meaningful sound. My brain registered all this in a split second before my body decided to throw itself out of the crib and start to run. I crossed the house faster than I ever did, wasted no time changing out of my pajamas, and grabbed the car keys from the small table by the front door without ever pausing. I only have confused, disjointed memories of what happened after that. A flash of light, a loud crash, then flames, and the smell of gasoline, a few images, but still too many. I wish I could delete them from my mind. I wish I could delete them from my life. Most of all, I wish these words of mine could reach you. I wish you could really hear them rather than perceive them only as a panting breath and an undistinguished rattle. We rode out just as the sun peaked above the horizon. I scarfed down eggs and biscuits, followed by coffee, as the first few rays of light began to show through the window. We said goodbye to our ma and pa, and then we left. My older brother Bud and I are leaving our home in the beautiful foothills of Tennessee for the famed women, whiskey, and gold of the West. We're riding north to Missouri, and then picking up the trail heading out to Santa Fe. "Hey, Bud, slow up there. I don't want to tire already," I call. "Well, then don't tire. We've got a few hours until lunch. Then we can stop and give the horses a rest, and then go on. That ought to set a good pace." I hope so. I don't want to be stuck going across the plains during the summer. Relax. It's still April. Hell, there's still snow up on Rocky Top. We camp in the evening in a small clearing near a stream. We let the horses water and graze while we started a fire and ate our first dinner on the trail. The birds sing us a relaxing serenade as the sun sets and the light begins to fade. That wasn't too bad, Bud, I say. That was only the first day. We're still excited. Give it 2 weeks, and we're not going to want to get back in the saddle. You think. You'll see. Well, it's starting to get a little chilly, huh? Yeah, it was really nice there until the sun disappeared behind those trees. In the waning light, my eyes catch something just below the woodline. I turn and barely catch a glimpse of antlers retreating back into the forest. Huh. Most deer should have shed by now, yeah. I ask. Yeah, should have. Why? I just saw one that still had his crown. Man, I'd want to be the soul that finds those sheds come summer. You want to stay here and wait until they fall off. No, I'm just saying. All right, we'll find some more. Don't worry. The sun rises, and we get up, make coffee, break our fast, and set off. Lunch, nap, camp, and rest. The cycle repeats, and the days begin to blend together. In a couple of weeks, we will find ourselves in Missouri. Luckily, the weather has been in our favor, but the hills lessen and the land begins to open to us. We can see storms moving across the plains, some of which stand in our way. The rain hits, and it doesn't let up. We ride on until we eventually find a rock outcropping in which we can take shelter. Lightning shoots across the sky, and thunder brings it crashing down. Horses don't like this. Bud, I don't like this. Hope this lets up soon. It's a hell of a storm. We can't get nowhere in this. Ain't that the truth? At least we got this. As small as it is, it's some shelter. At least from the wind. I'm going to try to make a fire. You go ahead and try. I shall. I look back towards the fading sun as the sky flashes once more and see a misshapen form lurking on the horizon. It lifts its head as if it is calling, and the thunder crashes. A cold breeze gusts, and I get a strange feeling that I've seen it before. But when lightning strikes again, the horizon is clear, and I feel a sudden chill. After a few days, the rain finally relents, and we are able to carry on. We ride through the thick springtime mud left from the storms. The warm sun pokes through the clouds, landing on our skin and refreshing us. As we look to stop for lunch, we find an old trail just off the road and take it, leading us to the edge of a small hayfield. We dismount and give the horses some feed before we lay down to rest ourselves. This is much better, I say. I was starting to forget just what sunshine looked like. I hope we're through the worst of it. I don't know if I can do that again. Let's just relax and enjoy this while we can. Yeah. Anyway, I've got to take a leak, I say as I stand and walk into the woods. I unbuckle my pants to do my business and hear a few raindrops on the brim of my hat. I look up in curiosity and am horrified by the sight that greets me. Bud, get over here now, I shout. Mutilated arms, legs, and a headless torso hang upside down from the branches above me. Rainwater drips pale red from the exposed intestines. The chest cavity is strewn apart, the ribs are ripped open, and the lungs are gone. I didn't even see the blood on the ground. I don't understand how I missed that. I don't know how I didn't see this. How could I just die? I stammer. Hey, calm down. It's okay. We're fine. We're all right. Look, it just rained. It probably washed away. Whoever this was has been dead for some time. A long time likely. Who would do this? Why would they do this? I don't think it was an animal. Some nuts are my best guess. Local gang marking territory, maybe. We found it by accident. Well, for fun then. I don't know. If you want to play investigator, be my guest, but we should get out of here. What if the people fat? We'll be fine. Let's just go. We put that field far behind us, rode into the night to make it to the next town, and did the same the following day. After warm baths and 2 beds, when we set off the next morning, the riding started to put us at ease. The rhythmic walking of the horses, the wind was brushing through the swaying grass. Deer and buffalo lumber across the prairie, paying us no mind. A scarlet sunset is replaced by a starry night that melts into the dull light of another sleepy town. Another full belly and a restful sleep, we soon arrive and make a stop at the Army's Fort Riley for supplies before we continue on. I thought they said Kansas was flat. Give it a few days, Bud, and you'll be missing the hills. It will all be flat, and there won't be nowhere to hide from the wind. The night before we depart the Army post, we make a stop at the local watering hole for a good night's sleep. You boys don't look local, the bartender states as he pours our liquor. We're just passing through on our way out west, replies Bud. I see. Well, have one on the house. Why, thank you, sir. Have one yourself, I say as I pass $1 across the bar. Now thank you. He leans in and lowers his voice, whispering, let me give you boys some warning. Stick to the roads and be wary of strangers. They're only rumors, but there's talk of camps being attacked and destroyed in the night, and even cannibalism. Cannibalism, Repeats Bud. That's the word. Could just be Indians. Could just be gangs. And the dead picked apart by animals. But the way the wind blows across the prairie, sometimes it shrieks. It's just strange. Well, we'll be okay. We can handle ourselves all right. Of course, just spreading the word. Be careful now. Always. One more round, please. We throw back our last shots and head back to our rented room. We settle into bed, but despite the liquor, I have trouble falling asleep. The wind picked up on our walk back, and now I can hear it howling across the plains, almost as a warning. We wake up and set off with fuzzy heads in the early light. Do you put any stock in what that man said? I ask. Not really. It's just us out here. I'm sure they make up all kinds of ghost stories to frighten travelers into staying longer and buying more whiskey. What about the Indians? Kay fought some of them when he was young. They aren't nice. And what we found in that tree. Sure. Why do you think I bought this to protect ourselves? Bud says as he pulls out a silver revolver, the sun gleaming off the metal. You son of a gun. You're just now telling me. I just didn't want to worry you. Or worse, say something dumb to a stranger. Well, I hope we don't need it. If we do, we've got it. We find a last hill as the land finally flattens out before us. Tall grass swaying in the breeze as far as the eye can see. In the setting sun, we light a fire to warm our dinner. Coyotes begin to yip in the distance while we eat, and afterwards we crawl onto our mats to gaze out at the stars. I can't believe it's so clear out here. So dark, but so peaceful, I whisper. It sure is. Quiet too. I bet even the rain is relaxing. Yeah, I'm sure that storm we got caught in would have been relaxing all right. All right, that's it. Good night. I begin to doze off when Bud whispers, Man, something must have just died, or the wind shifted or something. Do you smell that? I didn't catch it earlier, but damn, this reeks. I didn't either. Gosh, that's awful though. Too late to try to move though. We'll just have to bear it. Hey, was I asleep for long? I know we're out in the open, but it sure got cold. It's just the night. It won't be this bad. And a deafening shriek rips through us, chilling us to the bone as we cover our ears. The horses tear off. In their place, a galloping sound runs up on us and stops just outside the light of our fire. We scramble out of our blankets and huddle together, panicking, eyes searching, gasping, and shaking. Look, Bud whispers and points. I see. Eyes. A faint pair of red coals float out in the darkness, belonging to a shape that begins to stomp at the ground, treading, threatening, and taunting. As it dances around the edge of light, I begin to make out a familiar pair of antlers, and a thought strikes me hard. Bud's hand begins to raise, taking aim with the pistol as it glints in the firelight. Show yourself. Simon. Come get some. He challenges, and he spits. The shape snorts, turns, and trots away. We let out a collective sigh, which was overridden by a scream that pierced the prairie night. We don't sleep. As soon as light breaks on the prairie, we gather our things. We find the horses a mile from camp and mount them up. We need to make it the next town, Bud demands. The next town. That's almost 30 miles away. We don't have a choice. Whatever that thing was, I don't know if it will be stopped another night. It must have only been toying with us. It'll come back. Bud, that creature. I think it's been stalking us since we left home. Have you lost your mind? Hear me out. Last night. Bud, it has antlers, and you think that we got a man-eating deer following us from home. All right, that's nice. Now I know you've lost your mind. Hell, we ain't even been on the plains 2 days. Listen to me. That first night, I saw that buck duck back into the woods. I didn't think much of it, but we felt that cold breeze. And then, when we got caught in that thunderstorm, I saw it again and got the same chill. And then last night it got really cold before it came. He pulls his horse to a halt and stares at me and then the ground. You're right. I remember that now. It has been following, hasn't it? And the wind is chasing after us. We almost made it. Almost. We can see pillars of smoke rising on the horizon to the west, beckoning to us. But before we reach safety, we come to a river, swollen from the rains of that terrible storm. No, no, no. We can't cross here. The horses will never make it across. There's got to be a better place, either up or down river. And what we split up to find it. We'll both be in pieces before the sun rises. Let's find a bend in the river. We won't be able to cross. But it probably can't either. There'll be fewer sides we have to defend. All right. Here, I think I see one upstream. Follow me. We reach one in the dying light, dismounting and ditching our horses as a cold wind begins to pick up. We gather some driftwood and try to set a fire, but each attempt is snuffed out. Finally, we give up and settle on the other side of a washed-up log, our backs to the dark, muddy water. With the sun down, the moon offers the only light, casting faint shadows. I guess this is where we make our stand. You loaded? Always. You ready? Well, the unmistakable stench of decay begins to waft in, and we know it's time. A pair of red eyes appear out of the darkness. Its feet pound against the dirt. Its breath hisses savagely. It stomps closer and closer until we can make out its true form. Antlers on top. The same ones that I've seen. Connect to a fleshless skull. Fiery coals in its hollowed-out eyes and fangs bared. The neck down is that of an emaciated human, twice the size but with rotten skin and jagged bones. Crawling around on all fours, ready to pounce, ready to kill. It closes in, approaching our hiding place, hissing, drooling, and savoring the ending of its long hunt. My brother looks at me, nods, and then cocks the pistol and pulls back the hammer, taking aim. It grabs the log. The cylinder rotates. The wood is thrust aside. The hammer slams. Nothing. It grabs him, grabs his head, screams, squeezes. My heart sinks. A flash of red. The sickly sound of raw meat hits the ground as his headless body falls. It lets out a victory cry, and I jump, falling back. I land in the water with a loud splash, and its eyes fixate on me. The cold river shoots needles into my body, but I force myself deeper, hoping I can maybe make it to the other side. The undertow pulls me beneath the water, but also downstream. I begin to feel the bottom as my breath begins to run out, but then I realize it's beginning to feel shallow. I push myself and finally find myself crawling out onto the riverbank, gasping for air. I look back across the water and around, listening. Wind out on the prairie. The rushing water behind me, my clothes were dripping onto the dirt and stones. Nothing more. I let out a sigh and began to sob. Bud, I'm so sorry. I weep. I begin to collect myself when a cold, foul draft causes me to look up. My own brown eyes meet red ones as a skeletal hand reaches for my face. I try to scream, but the bony palm muffles the sound. Another victory cry, another squeeze. Pain. Ice pop. Bone cracks. The night explodes. At 3 a.m., I was awoken by an ear-piercing scream coming from the woods. Waking up my husband, I asked him to listen to the sound, which persisted for several minutes. It sounds like a mountain lion. It's probably trying to lure in some bait. No one screams like that for that long. Try to go back to sleep. It'll stop soon. He rolled over and went back to sleep. Eventually, the screaming did stop. However, I couldn't shake the feeling that something worse was going on. Eventually, I did find sleep again. The next morning, we went out to the lake. The cabin we stayed in was something we both decided was a great place to spend our honeymoon. I thought, With both of us being shut-in kind of people, that 2 weeks in the woods by ourselves would be heaven. It's nice so far, but the alleged mountain lion is distressing, to say the least. How late did the wildlife keep you up? My husband, Thomas, asked, no doubt looking for bags under my eyes. It didn't last for long, but it made me pretty uncomfortable. Do you think it left? Most likely. My guess is that it was probably marking territory. Cats tend to get pretty pissed when other animals get on their turf. So long as we stay away from the foothills at night, we should be fine. After finishing up our chat about last night, we ended up talking about nothing for a couple hours. Honestly, it was pretty nice. However, I can't stop myself from staring off into the woods. I think I was looking for something, but honestly, I can't be certain of what I hope to see. Time passed, and the air grew cold as the sun dipped closer to the horizon. Thomas hugged me from behind and spoke into my ear. Let's get some food in us and turn in for the night. I've got you something you might like. When we got inside, he presented me with a small box wrapped in red wrapping paper and topped with a small bow. I gasped dramatically. A rectangle. My favorite. Babe, you always know just what to get me. He laughed and responded smoothly. You joke now, but that very well may be your favorite rectangle you'll ever have. My interest piqued. I quickly tore away the wrapping paper to find inside a mint-condition copy of an original printing of a Lovecraft book. Oh my God, how did you find this? This has to be nearly 100 years old. Can I even read it without the spine falling apart? Some rich asshole died and had a library that could rival the one in downtown Seattle. I may or may not have been friends with a relative of his during our college days. Said relative hated the guy and said I could raid the library because he knew we loved to read. So you're saying it's the genuine article. It should be okay to read. You're the best. We kissed and then made dinner. A few hours pass, and I'm finding myself having trouble attempting to sleep. Maybe I was waiting for it to happen again, or maybe I was too excited to read my new book. Taking the latter option into account, I open it up and turn on the small bedside lamp. Thankfully, my husband sleeps like a rock, so I didn't have to worry about waking him as I delved into a story written by a madman. However, as soon as I was no less than 10 pages in, it started again. There was a blood-curdling scream, as if someone's bones had been shattered. I listened intently and tried my damnedest to convince myself that it was just some cougar claiming territory. After what seemed like an eternity, it finally stopped. I only just noticed that I was standing at the window, and when I looked down, I could see my hands shaking violently. Whatever is out there, everything in my body is telling me that it's dangerous. I didn't sleep that night. When the sun rose, I hadn't moved an inch in probably hours. I didn't want to move, as if any evidence that I was here would put me in danger. Tom eventually woke up. "Did you sleep at all?" he asked. I silently shook my head. He kept pushing. "Did you hear the mountain lions again? It was closer this time. I don't know how much, but I don't like it. I understand. Look, we've got the whole week booked, and I'd hate to cut the honeymoon short. So I'll tell you what, we enjoyed today, and if you hear it again tonight, we'll call the ranger station, and they'll be down within minutes." "Thank you. I really appreciate it. Of course, as much as I love any reason to go somewhere, your comfort matters more. Plus, I also really don't like predator cats. They can be real nasty customers. I don't want to be near that, especially if you're right about it getting closer." We switched topics and started talking about other things. Eventually, we got dressed and had breakfast. Out of all the things we did to enjoy our time, I still couldn't stop thinking about the screaming. I needed to know what it was. I was convinced that it had to have been something else. As time passed, I stared into the forest, almost daring something to happen. But I realized that all I was doing was wasting the happiest week of my life on a nuisance that could be ignored with a set of earplugs. As the sun set over the foothills, I let my racing thoughts slow into a more relaxed state. I'm really glad I came here, even if I have to deal with stupid shit. Hey honey, what did you think of the book so far? Tom asked me, breaking me from my train of thought. It's fantastic, I love it. We talked more, and eventually it grew late. We tried to sleep, but again I found myself waiting for what I knew I was going to hear. Like clockwork, it began again. A blood-curdling scream rang out, and I left the bed. I knew it wasn't some animal. It couldn't be. I threw on some clothes and grabbed the emergency rifle over the fireplace, placed by the owners in case the wildlife got too close. I'm going to find whatever this damn thing is and make sure it doesn't bother me again. I took a flashlight and made my way into the woods. Making sure I was going the right way, I followed the screams deeper in. Nothing in this world could have prepared me for the source. Standing about 10 feet away, he was almost a man but too tall. It was nearly 8 feet tall and had long arms that almost touched the ground. The stark white, leathery skin encased this grotesque creature as I slowly scanned up. The hollow eyes stared directly into my soul as they bent back. When the things were placed, enormous hands were placed on the ground behind them for support. Its chest opened up into a giant, gaping mouth as it let out the same screams I had been hearing the past few nights. I ran all the way back to the cabin, not stopping for a second. When I got inside, I flipped the lights on and shook my husband violently. May, what the hell? I didn't even give him time to think as I started grabbing clothing and shoving it into a bag. Get in the car. What? Wah. Now, I admit I did feel bad for screaming, but he knew I would never raise my voice like that unless it was a life or death scenario. He stopped asking questions and just threw on a pair of pants as he worked his way to the door. I grabbed the book and my keys as I made my way to the car. As soon as I was in, I peeled out nearly faster than the car could handle. So are you going to tell me why we didn't call the ranger and why you're currently breaking every speed law in the country? Tom finally asked. Because I sincerely doubt that a ranger would know what to do with whatever I saw. Wait, you went out there. Why? Because I knew it wasn't an animal. And I was right. I'm going to pretend you aren't scaring the shite out of me, and instead move on to my next question. What about our stuff? We can go back in the morning, but right now we're going somewhere safe. The rest of the drive was silent as I looked for a hotel. When we found one, I quickly checked in, and nearly as soon as my head touched the pillow, I fell asleep from pure exhaustion. When we drove back in the morning, Tom decided to press again. So are you going to tell me what you saw out there? Would you even believe me? Honestly, I don't know, but it would be nice to have some idea why you practically tried to kill us on the drive away. Just imagine if Slenderman was a striker. I beg your pardon. We shared a laugh, and my nerves finally settled a little. Unfortunately, it was short-lived because, as soon as we pulled in, all my fears were vindicated. The door to the cabin was ripped off its hinges, the blinds were all torn down, and everything inside was ransacked. I stayed still and silent as the creature from the night before could be seen tearing the cabin apart from the inside. Tom whispered, "Is that it?" I nodded. "I'm going to drive away very slowly. In 5 minutes, I want you to call the ranger station and tell them a bear got in." He nodded, silently agreeing. As I backed up slowly, I thanked my lucky stars that the driveway was made of dirt and not gravel. Several minutes passed as I made my way back up the path, driving significantly slower than last night. The call was made, and the rangers said they'd check the area out and call us when it's safe. An hour passes, and we get the all clear. When we made it, one man in the group came out to greet us. "Good to see you too. The bear seems to have left. But weirdly enough, it didn't take any food. It's not common, but you definitely got lucky. It seems like it was having a bad day. How come you two were out when it came?" I was quick to respond. "We were on a hike. We thought it would have been fine to not lock up, but I guess we were wrong. You guys gave us the all clear though. Any idea why something came out? If we could control the animals, we wouldn't need to work here. Unfortunately, they can just be unpredictable sometimes. He said it with certainty, but I could tell he was a little confused himself. After we finished talking, we got the go-ahead to grab our things and go. After calling the owners we rented the cabin from, we eventually got a refund. Not wanting to waste the rest of our week, we elected to stay at the hotel and get a bunch of junk food. The rest of the day was much more relaxing, knowing that the previous night was scary and we got out okay. 4 hours later, I lost all hope as I was awakened by the most blood-curdling scream I had ever heard. "Tom!" I cried out quietly. A hand under the covers grabbed mine. "I hear it too." I grew up in a very remote small town called Funkley in northern Minnesota. I had lived my entire life there. Despite what you might read about it now, there once was a small population that did reside there. That was up until 2004. Nothing really happened in this town. Everyone knew everyone. Just a cheerful and peaceful place filled with friendly people. I had a wife and 3 kids, 2 daughters and a son. At times, I did feel bad that my kids didn't have a lot of other kids they could interact with. But the kids, my wife, and I enjoyed the peace. We would hike and explore the woods on almost a daily basis. Things were good there. That was until one fall evening in 2004, when something happened that changed everything I knew. An incident that I did try to come forward to tell authorities about. When they wouldn't listen, I tried to tell anyone who would listen, only to get called crazy or a deranged psycho. You can only take so much of such accusations and almost get thrown into a loony bin until you realize it's better to just keep your mouth shut. What happened was that on one particular night, my neighbor came to me to point out something unusual. I had been at my shed outside in the yard, putting some equipment away. I was closing the door when he told me about these weird lights in the sky and pointed out their unusual patterns that move at rapid speeds. Since there was no internet and cell phones were just as good as regular phones then, nobody had anything on hand to get any information or readily record what was happening. My neighbor hurries off to get his radio and his camera from his house. The guy was an aspiring photographer. The camera he had required a roll of film. Even had a dark room in his house to process the film and such. You know how to make your own pictures. Only person in the town with a camera of high quality. Of the standards of a camera back then, not like digital ones now. He proceeds to set up his camera for night photography and tunes the radio to different frequencies. Of course, there's nothing about strange dancing lights in the sky from any of the local stations. It had been going on for close to an hour. During this time, pretty much everyone in the whole town came out to witness this bizarre phenomenon. My family had heard the commotion, so they came out to join me. It was shortly after everyone came out to watch that the lights stopped moving in their sporadic patterns and just sat in one place. After a few moments, you could see that the lights were growing brighter, seeming to be coming in our direction. You can imagine the buzz of conversations going on. I'm wondering if we should be worried, panicking, or something at least. Like what the hell was going on, right? Is it something friendly? Is it hostile? A secret government project? Russia? China? North Korea? Crazy terrorists that hijacked another plane? The lights cover the distance to the tree line at the edge of our town at quite an astonishing speed, giving us further detail of the rough size of this thing that produced the lights. We had some street lights in the town, but not many, though there were brighter floodlights in an open field where we would have events, such as a carnival, fair, or some town event. So to help us all maybe catch a better glimpse of this thing, someone runs over to turn on these lights at the box that turns them on, which, by this time, had been moving slowly overhead. What didn't even occur to me up until this point was that there was hardly a sound. No roar of a combustion engine, turbine engine, or rocket, not even anything you hear on a helicopter. Just a slight hum. So when some of the light illuminated this mysterious object, there were plenty of gasps from startled onlookers. after the realization of what was being seen. A couple of the people quickly left for the safety of their homes, probably locking the doors, unsure from fear and confusion. Regardless of whether people stayed or had just left, we could now assume that what we were seeing was not of human origin. Or if it was, then it must be some kind of top-secret government project. Though I do think that pretty much all of us were thinking that it had to be a real UFO. It proceeds to just glide in the direction of the floodlights and stops directly over the field. It's like half the people are just fascinated by what they're seeing, while the other half is really starting to panic. Now that the craft is over the field and can be seen in full detail, it was quite a sight to behold. It was like a flying saucer you'd see portrayed in sci-fi films, comics, and stuff. No kind of combustion, no blades, although you can barely make out some kind of barrier, a field of some sort around the craft, I guess, just barely visible to the eye. This thing then proceeds to descend to the ground. The goddamned UFO is landing in the field. So not only are we witnessing a UFO with our own fucking eyes, but we're also about to encounter extraterrestrial life. Like real goddamn aliens. I've read a few things in the sci-fi genre that make me a bit hesitant about getting too close. Stuff about anal probing and whatnot. So I'm not overly excited about joining the majority of people who are approaching the landing site. Nobody really knows yet if they're going to be friendly or hostile, though they hadn't shot any laser beams or burned anything in its path. Not yet, at least. It was also not a massive ship, so at least it could be assumed they weren't planning a full-scale invasion either. I watch with a few people in my family from the edge of my yard. The field and everything taking place are well visible. We were about 100 to 200 yards away. Across a road from the field, we watched as the craft approached the ground while these stilts came folding out from underneath it. So when the craft did land, these stilts held it up about 5 feet or so off the ground. A big group of people were standing together just about 50 yards or more from where it was landing. I couldn't exactly tell the distance from where we were. There was some excited commotion coming from the crowd. It was at this point that I noticed my neighbor unmounting his camera from the tripod and making some adjustments. I approached him to ask if he really was going to get closer for some pictures. Since he's pretty much the only one I feel like is a friend in the town, I was concerned for his safety. He assures me that he's just going to the edge of the field and not any closer. He wanted to document everything in great detail. I do advise him to be cautious as I watch him walk off towards the field. It was just as he got to the edge of the field that the whole thing turned into a living nightmare. There was a bright flash of light followed by a pulse-like sound. Everything went dark. The power to everything in town just went out in an instant, leaving us all in darkness. I felt my heart skip a beat as I started to hear frantic shouting. Everyone was obviously starting to panic. Then, just like in any kind of alien sci-fi movie, the door to the craft starts to slide open to the right, with a blinding light shining from within the craft. A platform extends from the door to the ground. Without even really thinking, I was walking towards the field along with the others with me, including my family. Everyone had grown silent, restless with anticipation at what is taking place. 2 silhouettes now stand at the door of the craft. The bright white light shining out from their backs, they start to descend the ramp as the floodlights on the field flicker back on. My group is now at the edge of the field, behind the rest of the people from the town. You can now see these entities and make out their appearance. They reach the bottom of the ramp, then stand there, not moving forward towards the crowd. They stand about 6 feet tall. They wear loose-fitting white garments with hoods pulled over their heads, which droop over their eyes. They reach up and pull back their hoods with long, bony fingers. They look remarkably human, with some eerily slight differences. Their hair is long and bleached white. Their eyes haunt me as I stare at them to see that they are completely black. Their ears cannot be seen from underneath their thick, white, long hair to their mid-backs. The nose is pretty human-looking, along with a mouth of appropriate human size, though their lips can barely be recognized as they are thin with a dullish gray to highlight them. Moments pass as we all just stare at them. And they just stare back. The unblinking eyes sent a chill down my spine. Finally, someone manages to gather enough courage to step forward. While approaching them, he then asks what it is that they want. Why are they here? He takes another step and brings up a hand to see if they will shake his hand in greeting. Then, in an instant, one of them whips out a hand from underneath its garment, which reveals a device in its hand. The entity brings the device forward and points it at the man who is walking toward them. Zap. A flash illuminates the crowd briefly, and the man is sent flying off of his feet and backwards by 5 feet before sprawling onto the ground. Fear and anger erupt from the crowd. Some men appear to start working toward the entities, a few others, and the women start to flee. A loud, shrill, high-pitched noise emits from every direction, it seems. My head starts to feel as if it's about to rip apart. All I can see is a blinding light as I put my hands over my eyes and fall to my knees. The pain is unbearable as I begin to scream. Was I screaming? The noise is deafening, and it's all I can hear. I become aware that, after a moment, there is now a deafening silence. I take my hands from my eyes as the reality of what is happening begins to hit me like a ton of bricks. There is a madness that has consumed all the men around me, yet somehow it hadn't affected me. I see a man grab another by the hair as he begins to pull with all of his might. A few hairs are pulled from the scalp, but the rest hold on as the skin rips. The hair, scalp, and flesh pull apart to expose the skull, blood pouring over the man's face. In shock, I begin to reel backward onto my hands and feet, backpedaling from the grotesque scene. I get up, twisting onto my feet, trying to get away from the crowd of people gone mad. I see another man stop another from biting him by grabbing a hold of the man's mouth with both hands. With strength fueled by pure adrenaline and otherworldly force, he then begins to force the mouth to open wider and wider as the jaw unhinges, allowing the mouth to be ripped open wide. The lips ripped from the edge of the mouth to the jaws. All the men except for me are mutilating each other beyond recognition. I manage to get away from the crowd of insanity. It occurs to me that, for some reason, I was spared from the ongoing madness. Somehow, I was unharmed by the infliction. It seemed as if those mad could not sense my presence, only attacking all the others gone mad. My mind is reeling in terror as a frightening thought crosses my mind. I begin to desperately shout to find my wife and children. I quickly realized that there were no women in the chaos. I quickly looked in the direction of the ship. That's when I made the connection. I see all the women, and they wear an emotionless expression, as if stuck in some sort of trance, all in a line as they walk up the ramp to their apparent waiting prison. I shout my wife's name as I break out into a full sprint toward the ship. I am screaming at these devils to stop, to let these women go. I can see the last of the women is about to walk onto the ramp. I briefly make a note that it is a man walking last. I see a young lady in front of the man and see that it's my youngest daughter. Rage has fueled me as if it's everything I know. I am quickly closing in on one of the entities. I am just about to attack this wicked thing just as a pulse envelopes me, which blasts me backwards, and then I land hard on my back, slamming my head onto the ground. Blackness shrouds my vision as I lose consciousness. I come to a while later, as my head is still throbbing from the impact. I sit up as I rub my temple with my right hand. I can hear groans and sobbing from the few men still alive after the carnage. I open my eyes and see the sun beginning to rise. The craft is now gone, with no indication that it ever existed, other than the bloody aftermath, and all the women now gone. I get to my feet so I can find my boy and neighbor. I do eventually find my son in the fetal position, rocking back and forth and whispering to himself. I kneel beside him so I can see if he has any injuries. He flinches at my touch when I put my hand on his shoulder. I ask him if he is hurt, but he just continues to stare ahead with wide eyes, giving no recognition of my presence. He would never recover from that night. He tried to kill me several times after that night. A year had passed before I sent him to an institution. I haven't seen him in 3 years now. I did leave my son there to try to find my neighbor. Some men were barely alive as they gurgled on their blood, trying to get air. Those that survived, of which there were just 3, had bad injuries. All of them were in shock and never fully recovered. I did not find my neighbor among the dead. I also found out he was not home when I went and checked in on his house. I always wondered if he did go on the ship or what happened to him. That happened 16 years ago. I barely kept my sanity intact after all these years. I lost everything that I knew and loved that night. My wife and daughters, who were taken as prisoners. My son lost his mind to the point that he tried to kill me. My best friend, my neighbor, who was either taken or either went mad, and then vanished. I left that town after I sent my son away. It was not the same anymore. That town. The few still there just pretended as if nothing had ever happened. They would always stare at me, murmuring and looking at me sideways. But I'm here today talking to you because something happened just 2 days ago. It was the middle of the night as I tried to sleep, which is hard, as nightmares always creep in. I heard an extremely loud knock at my door. So of course, out of curiosity, I know I have to open it. I think it may even be my son, as he was before that night, finally recovered and was healed with the help of therapy. Although deep down I know that was most likely not the case, I had run to the door and quickly turned the handle to swing it open. I was in absolute disbelief as to who was standing before me. My neighbor, my old best friend, stood there in an all-white garment. Right before my eyes was the man I thought I had lost. He looked as if he had not aged a day after 16 years. He even had his camera in hand. But his eyes were all black.